Gravity is a fundamental force of nature. It is an invisible pull that every object with mass exerts on every other object. Think of it as a constant, gentle hug from the Earth. This hug keeps your feet firmly planted on the ground. It ensures that when you drop a ball, it falls downwards, not upwards or sideways. Without this persistent embrace, our existence would be unimaginably different. This force dictates the very structure of planets, stars, and entire galaxies, holding them together in the vast expanse of the cosmos. It is the silent architect of our universe. This cosmic hug does much more than just keep us grounded. Gravity is the reason Earth has a moon orbiting it. The moon, in turn, creates tides in our oceans. Gravity is also responsible for holding our precious atmosphere close to the planet's surface. This blanket of air is what we breathe, and it protects us from harmful radiation from the sun. Even the rain that falls from the sky, nourishing life, does so because gravity pulls the water droplets downwards. It is a force so pervasive, so constant, that we often take its profound importance entirely for granted in our daily lives. Imagine a universe without this fundamental attraction. Stars might not form, as the gas and dust clouds would not collapse under its influence. Planets wouldn't have stable orbits, or perhaps wouldn't even exist as distinct celestial bodies. Our own solar system is a delicate dance, choreographed by the sun's immense gravity, keeping all the planets in their predictable paths. The very shape of Earth, a slightly flattened sphere, is a result of the balance between gravity pulling inwards and the outward force from its rotation. It's a cosmic sculptor tirelessly at work. So gravity is not just about things falling down, it is about order. It is about structure. It is about the conditions necessary for life as we know it to emerge and thrive on a planet like Earth. It holds our world together, from the mountains on its surface to the very air we inhale. The loss of such a fundamental force would not be a minor inconvenience. It would be an event of unimaginable scale, unraveling the fabric of our reality in moments. If Earth suddenly lost all its gravity, the immediate effect on humans would be startling and terrifying. We would instantly become weightless. Imagine floating, completely untethered, with no up or down. Your body would drift uncontrollably. You might gently bump into the ceiling or drift out of an open window if you were near one. There would be no force holding you to the surface of the planet anymore. This sudden weightlessness would be profoundly disorienting, unlike anything experienced by anyone except astronauts in space, but far more chaotic, and without any preparation or safety measures. The physical sensations would be overwhelming. Nausea and motion sickness would likely affect many, as our inner ears, which help us balance, would be utterly confused. Inside our bodies, things would also change. Blood, no longer pulled downwards, would rush to the head, causing a feeling of fullness and potentially severe headaches. Our internal organs, accustomed to being settled by gravity, might shift slightly, leading to discomfort or even pain. Trying to move would be a bizarre challenge. Pushing off a wall would send you careening in the opposite direction until you hit something else. Breathing itself might feel different. While the air would still be around us initially, the act of inhaling and exhaling relies on muscle movements that are used to working against gravity's subtle influence. More critically, any loose items around us would also be floating. Imagine books, chairs, kitchen utensils, and everything not bolted down becoming airborne projectiles. Collisions would be frequent and potentially very dangerous. A simple pen floating at speed could cause serious injury if it struck someone in the eye. The world would transform into a hazardous three-dimensional obstacle course. Furthermore, the very act of standing or sitting would become impossible. Muscles designed to support our weight against gravity would find themselves with nothing to push against, leading to rapid atrophy if this condition persisted. Even simple tasks like eating or drinking would become incredibly difficult. Food would float away, and liquids would form spheres and drift, refusing to be poured or swallowed normally. Our bodies are fundamentally designed to function within a gravitational field, and its absence would throw every system into disarray, creating immediate and life-threatening dangers for everyone on the planet. The sudden disappearance of gravity would plunge the entire animal kingdom into a state of utter chaos and bewilderment. Just like humans, animals would become instantly weightless. Imagine herds of elephants or wildebeest, massive creatures, suddenly lifted from the ground, tumbling through the air in panic. Birds, masters of flight in a world with gravity, would find their abilities useless. Their wings are designed to generate lift against gravity, Without it, flapping would just send them spinning or tumbling. They could no longer control their altitude or direction in any meaningful way. Fish and other aquatic life would face an equally bizarre and deadly fate. While the water itself would also be affected, initially, fish would find themselves floating uncontrollably within their aquatic homes. If the water bodies themselves begin to break apart and float away, which they would, marine animals would be exposed to the air, or rather the vacuum that would soon follow, and perish. Whales and dolphins needing to surface for air would find the surface itself a chaotic, shifting concept. Their world would literally turn upside down and inside out. Land animals, from the smallest insects to the largest mammals, rely on gravity for basic locomotion. A cheetah's speed, a monkey's climb, an ant's scurry, all these movements are predicated on the existence of a stable down. Without it, they would be unable to move purposefully, hunt for food, or escape predators. The sheer terror and confusion would be immense. Many animals might injure themselves by colliding with objects or each other. The delicate balance of predator and prey, a cornerstone of every ecosystem, would instantly shatter. Consider the smaller creatures too. Insects would drift like dust motes. Burrowing animals might find themselves ejected from their homes if the soil itself begins to loosen and float. The very sounds of the natural world, the chirping of crickets, the roar of a lion, would soon be silenced as the medium for sound, our atmosphere, begins to depart. The intricate web of life, so beautifully adapted to Earth's gravitational pull over billions of years, would be torn apart strand by strand, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable disarray and silent floating forms. In a world abruptly stripped of its gravitational anchor, not only living beings but also all inanimate objects would be set free. Everything not securely fastened down would begin to float upwards, or rather, outwards from the Earth's surface. Imagine looking out your window to see cars, buses and trains gently lifting off the roads and tracks, drifting into the sky like bizarre metallic balloons. Loose soil, rocks and dust would rise, creating enormous, swirling clouds of debris that would quickly obscure the sun and fill the air with hazards. Our buildings and infrastructure, designed with the constant downward pull of gravity as a primary consideration, would face catastrophic failure. Gravity provides a compressive force that helps hold many structures together. Without it, tensions and stresses within materials would change dramatically. Skyscrapers might begin to buckle or even break apart, their components floating away piece by piece. Bridges, marvels of engineering that span vast distances by balancing forces against gravity, would lose their structural integrity almost immediately, their segments twisting and drifting. Think about the contents of our homes and cities. Furniture, appliances, personal belongings, all would become part of a colossal, slow-motion explosion directed away from the planet's surface. Water in reservoirs and pipes no longer held down would surge outwards. Power lines, if not immediately torn apart by other floating debris or structural failures, would hang uselessly or drift away. The very foundations of our civilization, built upon the assumption of a stable ground beneath our feet, would crumble and ascend into the void. The landscape itself would be transformed. Mountains are held down by gravity. Without it, internal pressures or even slight seismic shifts could cause them to shed vast quantities of rock and soil into the sky. The familiar contours of our planet would begin to blur and change. The sheer volume of material becoming airborne would be staggering, creating an almost impenetrable shroud of floating objects around the planet, at least for a time before they, too, escape into space. It would be an unimaginable spectacle of planetary deconstruction, a world literally coming undone. Section 5. Oceans afloat, Earth's mighty waters without bounds. The Earth's vast oceans, majestic and deep, are held in place by gravity's relentless pull. If this force were to vanish, the consequences for our planet's water would be monumental and visually astounding. The water would no longer be confined to ocean basins. Instead, the immense pressure at the depths of the ocean would be unleashed, and the water would begin to expand and rise. It wouldn't just float calmly, it would likely erupt upwards with considerable force, breaking apart into colossal globules and tendrils of liquid. These massive bodies of water, containing trillions of tons of liquid, would become enormous, free-floating spheres and irregular blobs, drifting away from the planet's surface. Imagine giant water droplets some miles wide, slowly ascending into the sky. Tides caused by the gravitational pull of the moon and sun would cease to exist because the primary force governing them is gone. Coastlines would become meaningless as the water detaches from the land. The familiar blue of our planet seen from space would begin to fragment and disperse. Rivers and lakes would suffer the same fate. Rivers would stop flowing towards the sea, instead their water would lift from their beds, forming elongated, snake-like ribbons of liquid that would also break apart and float away. Lakes, from the smallest ponds to the Great Lakes, would bulge upwards and then detach, their contents joining the exodus of water from the planet. All surface water, the lifeblood of continents, would be lost to the void. The comforting presence of rain would be a forgotten memory, as clouds themselves would dissipate and their water content float away. The loss of the oceans would have immediate and catastrophic effects on Earth's climate and temperature regulation, even before considering the loss of the atmosphere. Oceans act as massive heat sinks, absorbing and releasing energy, moderating global temperatures. Without them, temperature swings on the planet's surface would become far more extreme, assuming anything was left to experience them. The Earth would rapidly lose one of its most defining features, transforming from a vibrant water world into a dry, barren rock, its liquid treasures escaping into the cold emptiness of space. Section 6. Atmosphere's escape. Our precious gaseous shield vanishes. Our planet's atmosphere, the very air we breathe, is a delicate envelope of gases held close to Earth by the persistent tug of gravity. If gravity were to disappear, this vital shield would begin to dissipate almost immediately. The gases that make up our air, nitrogen, oxygen, and others would no longer be bound to the planet. With no force holding them down, they would expand outwards, rapidly thinning and escaping into the vacuum of space. This process would be swift and irreversible, like air rushing out of a punctured balloon. The consequences of losing our atmosphere would be devastating for any life that somehow survived the initial chaos. Firstly, there would be no air to breathe. Oxygen, essential for humans and most animals, would become incredibly scarce and then completely absent at the surface. Suffocation would be a grim reality for any creatures still clinging to existence. Furthermore, atmospheric pressure, which we barely notice but is crucial for our bodies to function and for water to remain liquid at normal temperatures, would drop to zero. The atmosphere also acts as a protective blanket. It shields us from the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation and burns up most meteoroids before they can reach the surface. Without it, the full intensity of solar radiation would bombard the planet, making the surface intensely hostile. Cosmic rays, high-energy particles from deep space, would also stream down unimpeded. Temperatures would fluctuate wildly between scorching heat during the day, if you could call it that, without an atmosphere to scatter light, and bone-chilling cold at night. Moreover, sound cannot travel in a vacuum. As the atmosphere thins and disappears, the world would fall silent. No wind, no rustling leaves, no animal calls, no human voices, just an eerie, profound stillness. Weather phenomena as we know them, clouds, rain, snow, wind, would cease to exist because they are all processes within the atmosphere. Earth would become an airless, silent, and irradiated world, exposed to the harsh realities of space without its protective, life-sustaining gaseous cocoon. Section 7. Technologies tumble global systems in utter freefall. Our modern world is intricately woven with technology, much of which relies on principles that involve gravity, or operates in environments shaped by it. The loss of Earth's gravity would send our technological infrastructure into an immediate and catastrophic tailspin. Satellites, for instance, maintain their orbits through a delicate balance between their forward velocity and Earth's gravitational pull. Without gravity, this balance is broken. They would no longer orbit but fly off in a straight line, tangential to their previous path, disappearing into space. This means that global positioning systems, or GPS, would fail instantly. Navigation for ships, planes, and even cars that rely on GPS would become impossible. Communication satellites, which relay television signals, internet data, and phone calls across continents, would also be lost. International communications would break down. Weather satellites, crucial for forecasting and tracking storms, would drift away, leaving us blind to atmospheric changes, assuming there was any atmosphere left to observe. Our interconnected global village would become profoundly disconnected. On the ground, infrastructure designed with gravity in mind would face immense strain and likely fail, as discussed with buildings. But consider power grids. Many components rely on stable positioning and the predictable behavior of materials under gravity. The widespread chaos of floating debris and structural failures would undoubtedly lead to massive power outages. Cooling systems for power plants, including nuclear facilities, often rely on water circulation driven by pumps that expect gravity. Their failure could lead to meltdowns, though the lack of atmosphere and water might change the nature of such disasters. Even simpler technologies would be affected. Anything that relies on weight or balance would cease to function as intended. Scales would read zero. Pendulum clocks would stop. Construction equipment, vehicles, all are designed for a world where gravity is a constant. The tools and systems that underpin our society, from agriculture to manufacturing to transportation, would be rendered useless or destroyed. The technological framework of human civilization would collapse, leaving behind a disconnected and powerless world, adrift in more ways than one. Section 8. Earth's drastic metamorphosis. A planet fundamentally unmade. The cumulative effect of losing gravity would be a rapid and horrifying transformation of Earth itself. It would cease to be the vibrant, dynamic planet we know. With the atmosphere gone and the oceans dispersed into space, the surface would become a barren, desolate wasteland. The familiar blue and white marble teeming with life would quickly turn into a silent, rocky orb, exposed directly to the harshness of space. This is not a slow change, this is an almost instantaneous unmaking of a world. Temperatures on this new Earth would swing to unbearable extremes. During the day, with no atmosphere to filter sunlight or distribute heat, the sun-facing side would become incredibly hot, capable of baking rocks. At night, with no atmospheric blanket to retain warmth, temperatures would plummet to far below freezing. Any remaining surface ice, perhaps in shadowed craters, might sublimate directly into space, but liquid water would be a distant memory. The very ground beneath where our feet once stood would be an alien landscape. The loss of gravity would also impact the planet's geology, though perhaps on longer timescales than the immediate surface changes. Gravity helps maintain the Earth's spherical shape and plays a role in tectonic plate movement and volcanic activity by influencing pressures within the mantle. While the planet wouldn't instantly fly apart, its internal dynamics would be fundamentally altered. Mountains, no longer compressed by gravity, might slowly erode or even relax in strange ways if internal pressures become dominant, though the immediate ejection of loose material is the more pressing concern. Ultimately, Earth would become a dead planet, more akin to Mercury or the Moon, but with the added chaos of its former contents drifting around it or having already escaped. No life could survive these conditions. The rich tapestry of ecosystems, built over billions of years of evolution within a stable gravitational environment, would be utterly annihilated. The planet would be a stark monument to a fundamental force lost, a silent testament to how critical gravity is not just for us, but for the very identity and existence of Earth as a habitable world. Section 9. The Silent End, Long-Term Fate, and an Unsettling Cosmic Stillness. In the long term, an Earth devoid of gravity presents a truly grim and final picture. There would be no recovery, no adaptation for life as we understand it. The planet would continue its journey around the sun, but as a sterile, lifeless rock. Without an atmosphere, there would be no wind, no weather, no erosion by water or ice. The scars of its sudden transformation, the places where oceans and atmosphere departed, would remain starkly visible, perhaps subtly altered over eons by micrometeorite impacts and solar radiation. The concept of solutions in such a scenario is largely science fiction. Recreating a force as fundamental as gravity on a planetary scale is beyond any conceivable technology. Life, if any microscopic extremophiles deep within the crust somehow survived the initial transition, which is highly improbable, would have no path to re-emerge on the surface. The conditions for life, liquid water, a stable atmosphere, moderate temperatures, protection from radiation, would all be irrevocably gone. Earth's story as a cradle of life would have reached its definitive end. The debris from Earth, its former atmosphere, oceans, and countless objects would continue to disperse into the solar system. Some might eventually be captured by other planets or the sun, or perhaps drift into interstellar space. The planet itself might even undergo subtle changes in its rotation or orbit over vast timescales due to the mass loss and the way it was ejected, though the sun's gravity would still dictate its path through space. Assuming the sun's gravity remained, the Earth as a system would be fundamentally broken, This thought experiment underscores the profound interconnectedness of our universe and the delicate balance of forces that make life possible. Gravity is not just a convenience, it is a cornerstone of existence. Its hypothetical loss paints a picture of cosmic fragility, reminding us how fortunate we are to live on a world where this invisible embrace holds everything together, allowing the magnificent drama of life to unfold. The silent, gravityless Earth would be a chilling reminder of what happens when a fundamental cosmic constant is removed from the equation of a living world.